We are on air.
Thank you, Ms. Stern. Welcome, everybody, to the Great American Teach-In. My name is Mrs. Blue, and I am the middle school language arts teacher for Pasco eSchool. And I am very excited and pleased to share with you a very special person to me. My brother-in-law, David Blue, has agreed to come and speak with you today about what it's like to be a professional actor. He lives in Hollywood, out there in LA. Um, and how long have you been out there, Dave? Like 15 years, somewhere
Oh,
around
like
there?
12 or 13, yeah.
Yeah, it's been a long time.
It's been a long time.
Um,
Yeah.
so, are you telling me to move around less? Okay.
No, she's telling me because I'm staring at
She's
your
like,
video and not the camera. I'm an actor.
oh.
I'm staring at cameras.
Anyways, that being said, thank you so much for joining us. I'm going to hand it over to David, who's going to share with you some information about what it takes to be an actor in Hollywood and how he got into the profession. And just share some general tips with you. So if you have questions while he's talking, feel free to text me. The number is at the bottom of my screen there. It's 813-602-BLUE or 2583. So you
Ooh.
text those questions and I will get them to David for you. Okay? And off to you, Mr. Blue.
Thank you, Mrs. Blue. That's really weird. Hi, everybody. I'm David Blue. I am a actor, director, writer, producer, all that jazz, because in this town you kind of have to do all of those things. But before we get into that, I'll just tell you a little bit about myself. Born in New York, but then we moved to Florida when I was a kid, and I started going to elementary, middle school, and high school in Florida, and kind of acted the whole time, doing what I enjoyed just in my spare time, whether it be school productions or community theater or what have you. And it wasn't until senior year of high school that I really realized, as I was applying to colleges and getting accepted for computer science at FSU and UF and all these other places, that acting was really what always made me happy, and maybe I should try to do that for a living and follow my passion instead. And kind of at the last second, decided to go to the University of Central Florida for acting and musical theater, which I loved and did a lot of productions there. Actually, originally started as a double major in computer science and did all of my training there. From there, I went to SETC, which, if you live in the Southeast, is a wonderful resource that I highly recommend, which led to regional theater productions for me and internships, and then eventually decided to risk everything and do something I had always wanted to do but never done, and move to LA, having never been on the West Coast before, and started pursuing a career in television and film, which we'll get to is fun and amazing, but also not all glamour and glory. Dun, dun, dun. Long story short, I started in commercials and then worked my way up to co-stars and guest stars and recurring guest stars and then series regulars and whatever comes next. Let me start my slideshow because I think that'll help. You're going to say goodbye to my face right now. I hope that's okay. Hold on one second. And the slideshow begins. Can you guys see it?
We can see it.
Woohoo! Okay, so I just wanted to talk because it was a hard choice for me, and as much as I loved my schooling, I go back and teach sometimes there. The hardest thing I think about acting is since it's such a creative art, it's hard for people to consider it a career until it either just happens or somebody pushes them into it. So I kind of wanted to talk about, oh, that's me, by the way. That's my face. I wanted to talk about the actual career, the actual industry, what it's like, and why you should or shouldn't do it, which brings us to my resume. That's the next slide. Forgive me. Here are some things I've been in case you don't know who I am or why you should listen to me about acting or anything. I am very, very happy to have a BFA, a Bachelor of Fine Arts, two, actually, in acting and musical theater. And I've performed at theaters like Actors Theater of Louisville, Mark Taper Forum, there in Florida, the Disney Institute. But I've also been on shows like Ugly Betty, Stargate Universe, Moonlight, Castle, blah, 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 blah. So acting, why do you want to do it? This is the most important question you can ask yourselves, and I think it's where everyone should start, because a lot of people in the television and film industry have a tendency to pursue the fame and the fortune, which sounds wonderful, and we would all love that. But I don't think people realize how hard it really is. The statistic that I heard most recently was of all the members of the Screen Actors Guild, which is anyone who has booked a union job, 1% actually make their living acting. So you have to think about all the people who aren't even in the Screen Actors Guild who don't make a living. But let's just boil that down to the people in the guild, 1% make a living. It's really, really hard. So you have to really ask yourself why you want to do it. If it's the one thing in life that makes you happy, then 100% do it. And I always ask people that. I kind of trick people when they come on my podcast or what have you and say, if you had $10 million, what's the first two things you'd do? I say two because the first one is always like go on a trip or buy a house. The second is what you should be doing with your life. If it is reinvesting into something you want, whether it be opening a computer company or starting an architecture firm or travel the world and learn a bunch of languages, that's what you really want to do. And for me, it was always acting. It was start a production company, make projects for my friends, make my own projects. So if it's the thing in life that makes you happy, then I 100% support you do it. Stage acting is fun and presentational, and you play the same hour and a half of someone's life over and over on stage, and it's a blast. Screen acting drew me in more. It's very different. It's much more real because the camera is kind of in the room with you, right at your face. It's more realistic moments, and you get to progress through a character's life. If you do a feature film, yeah, you're doing it for an hour and a half. But if you do, let's say, a television show, you get to live 40 hours of that person's life, or 60 or 100, and kind of see them grow and change. And I always kind of say acting is like being an armchair psychologist. We're psychologists without degrees and no right whatsoever to practice psychology, because we learn what makes a person tick and why they do the things they do. And when you do something, let's say on television, you really get inside of a character and understand how they work. So as you move forward, you kind of feel like you're growing, and so is this person that you're playing inside of you, and you really get to track that. Next slide. Oh, that's 2 slides. There we go. Hollywood. The good, the bad, and the ugly. Forgive the picture. I thought it was funny. That's from the Comic-Con Walking Dead party red carpet that we went to. The negatives of the industry, let me say first. It's very hard. It's hard to make a living. It's hard to start your career. There's no set track. It's not like you can buy one person's book of how they did it and follow that path and become successful yourself. It's kind of figuring your own way, and that's terrifying. The positives are when you work, the money's good. It's better than you would think it should be. The reason for that is because it's paying you for all the time that you haven't been working. Let's say that you are a very successful television actor and you book 4 or 5 guest stars, and that's an important appearance on a television show. That's only 4 paychecks per year. Those paychecks might be nice, but when you spread that out for your salary for the whole year, it's really not as much as you would think. So there's this weird disconnect between the perception of actors and what really happens. I highly recommend a documentary if you're really interested in the industry called That Guy, ... who was in that thing, because it talks about 16 career character actors and the ups and downs of their career, and you'll hear them say things like they still drive their 1984 Nissan, or they live in a modest house that they've had ever since they first came out, because it's a career. It's not just glitz and glamour and fame. It actually is work. But that all being said, it really is fun if it's what makes you happy. For me, I'd rather be on set for 22 hours than work one day and have 5 days off to do whatever I want, because being in front of the camera is the best thing. I have a blast, the people I work with are fun, and the process itself is fun for me. I love waiting around for them to set up a shot or playing with another actor on screen. Boop, boop. Training. Now, this is a stickler point for me. A lot of people have a tendency to just become an actor. It's one of the weirdest careers in the world because it's one of the only that you can just say, I'm an actor, and now you are. You can't walk into a bank and say, I'm a CEO, and now you're a CEO. So a lot of people tend to come out to whether it be New York or LA and just hit the ground running, which is fine, but you need to keep training. You need to have the skill sets to always be prepared for what pops up in this industry, whether it be auditions or meetings or learning how to do your own taxes, which is a nightmare when you're a creative type, or just making ends meet. You really need to have a support group and then also a training background to fall back on, a tool belt, if you will. I highly, 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 highly recommend college for theater training. And in that way, I actually recommend finding the program that fits right for you. As great as theater history and all that is, I really lucked out with the University of Central Florida's conservatory because it was very training-based. While they did teach us theater history and theater business, the training they gave me about acting and performing really laid the groundwork that helped me start booking work when I first moved out to LA. And I worked with a few people at first who had gone to, let's say, Ivy League colleges, who had also studied theater. And I was really intimidated by them because they're great schools. But honestly, when it came down to it, when somebody gets up to do a monologue or be in a performance, it's the training that makes them stand out. When you're at an audition, it's fantastic if you can tell me everything that Bob Fosse's ever directed, and you should know the theater history of the industry you're in, but that's not going to help you get the job. On the flip side, in all honesty, I am so happy to have a Bachelor of Fine Arts degree, but that degree itself will not get me a job. The training I acquired along the way will. So when you're looking at a program, I think you should check it out. You should actually go, see what the vibe is, see if you feel like you fit in, but also just keep in mind on what you want to do with your life. Don't go 4 years to a musical theater college because you love musical theater if you're not willing to then move to New York and wait tables and spend a few years struggling because it's what makes you happy. Destinations! Good segue. Los Angeles versus New York. Forgive my humor here. I made New York look a little cold. When I graduated forever ago, people in my program didn't really go to Los Angeles. It was a theater program, so most people went to New York. A few people from previous classes had gone, but not really enough to make a great support system. I will say that now a lot of people from UCF do come to LA, which is interesting. The unfortunate truth is that while things have gotten better, New York is still mostly where you should go if you want to pursue theater, whether it be musical theater or straight plays or what have you. That is where the bulk of the off-Broadway and the Broadway will really, really make a difference for you. LA is mostly film and TV. There are great theater programs out here. There are great theater companies. There are some great plays. For some weird reason that I've never understood that frustrates me, it's harder to find. There's a lot more you have to wade through to find the good stuff. So luckily for you guys, it's a little bit more mixed than it was when I first decided. There is television and film in New York. You have shows like Law and Order, all the Law and Orders for that matter, and actually a lot of other shows that are casting out of New York nowadays. And because of the internet, you can submit yourself for auditions for television and film while you're there. But it will probably not anytime soon change that Los Angeles is where you should be for TV, film, and New York is where you should be for theater. This is a sad one, this next slide. Money. Money is sad because it's important. Again, in all honesty and just to be completely transparent, it's hard to make a living when you're first starting in theater or TV film because you have rent, you have bills to pay, you have food, I would assume you like to eat. And in order to do that, you need to find some sort of survival job. Now, it can still be something you love, but here's the stickler that a lot of people don't think about ahead of time. When you're you're trying to do any sort of creative art, you can't really work during the daytime. You have to be available a lot of the time, or able to get available for an audition or a meeting or a class or whatever. So that's why the old stereotype of actors waiting tables or bartending comes in, because those are nighttime jobs and jobs you can easily get covered. And those are not fun jobs to work for long periods of time. A lot of people nowadays have taken to, not that I am in these programs or disapproving them, Uber driving, because it's an alternative to waiting tables and bartending. I waited tables for years and bartended for a few years before I started making enough money acting where I could just do that as a day job. So you're kind of working multiple jobs at the same time. You have to think about that. It takes up a lot of your time, and you need to prioritize. I know people who have worked a day job and had an audition that they really wanted, and it came down to which one's more important to them at the time. So you really need to think about your living. If you're independently wealthy, I'm very jealous, and maybe that could save you some time. But other than that, you need to make your ends meet so you're available for when that next job comes. Because the sad truth, let's just go with TV and film, is you never know when the next job is coming. You have to wait, let's say conceptually, you have to wait for a writer to write an episode of a show, let's go with television, that has a character that you are right for, and they that are like you, you could go a while without any opportunities. So you need to be able to survive between those jobs. The nitty-gritty, and my little tongue-in-cheek humor of pushing a boulder uphill. For those of you who don't really know television and film, it's a really weird system. There's something called the breakdowns, which is a website that agents, managers, and casting directors use. So here's how it works. A casting director gets a notice, let's say a show like The Vampire Diaries. They wrote an episode of The Vampire Diaries, and they need a 22-year-old hot blonde guy with a six-pack who's British. So they put that up on the breakdowns. And every agent and manager who has access to that site, which is anybody worth their weight, submits their clients that they think are right for that role. Then the casting director looks through all of these thousands of submissions at your headshot, your picture, which is a little tiny icon on your screen, and decides who to call in. Nowadays, they call in less than they used to because they get so many more submissions. But let's say they see 20 people, 20 or 30 people for that role out of the thousands in New York and the thousands in LA that they submitted. Then you go in and you audition for it, and if you're lucky, you get a call back a couple days later, and if you're lucky, you maybe, if the role is big enough, test for the role. There's a lot of hoops to jump through, I guess is what I'm getting at. And all these people that work for you, hopefully, get a little tiny percentage of what you make. As long as they're legitimate, an agent gets 10% of everything that they help you get. A manager gets 10%. A lawyer usually gets about 5%. So that's 25% of each one of your paychecks when you hopefully work going to other people. But these people are the gatekeepers in charge of you working, which can be, honestly, psychologically frustrating as an actor, because it doesn't feel like you have as much control of your career as if you, let's say, worked in an office, and you know that if you work for a year and work your way up, you'll get promoted. There's really not a lot of job security and predictions in this industry. I think Kevin Spacey even said it best once, where someone asked him, where do you have to get to not have to audition anymore? And he said, you don't. I still audition. You're still fighting for roles that you think you're right for, or even fighting with your people to convince them to submit you for something that you're right for. It's really kind of a weird system. And also on the how things work, television and film and the internet, they're all very, very different beasts. They're all almost 3 different careers you're pursuing. You can have a career in TV or a career in film, and they can help cross over. But it's really kind of about, for me anyway, the acting. It always comes down to that. I will act in anything as long as it's fun and with good people who are creative. Nowadays, there's a lot more on the internet, which, as you might have heard with the strike that happened a few years ago, Doesn't pay very much, but there's more web content, whether it be web series or things on Hulu or Yahoo or even just YouTube. I think that's just creative people wanting an outlet, but that will not pay your bills, sadly. Also out in LA and New York for that matter, networking is something that a lot of people don't talk about. The connections you make along the way will help you get future jobs. Like you'll make friends along the way that will do a project. You know, my girlfriend just produced a film and then asked me to star in it, or be in it, not star in it, sorry. So that ended up with me doing a short film. I was just the lead of a feature last year that a friend of mine was writing and asked me to audition for, which I did, but I ended up working with a friend of mine who we met in an acting class years ago in Los Angeles. You never really know how things work out, but you have to constantly be working. If this is what you love to do, you're always putting time into it. You're always putting all of your time and effort into classes, into workshops to meet casting directors, into sending out your headshots and resumes to people so they know you. Until you have an agent, you're sending out a bunch to people that you want to work with and personalizing those cover letters and getting out there and meeting people and going to class to meet your peers, not only to work on your talent so you're better when that audition comes up, but to meet your peers so you have a support system so you don't go crazy while you're waiting for that next job. And on that note, making your own work. Everyone in LA, you might notice, has 100,000 hyphens to their name, and that's because there's no set way. And when you're creative and you love entertainment, or anything for that matter, you just want to be part of it. So it's always been important to not just sit around and wait for opportunities, but more so than ever with the avenues that are available now, with technology being slightly cheaper, with web content, it's really important to find other avenues in what you love that you can also do. If you're waiting 2 weeks for an audition and you write at all and you're creative, you should be writing your own projects. You should be figuring out things that you would want to see and trying to put them together and maybe get them produced, because that could lead to more money for you. It could also lead to something else that makes you happy, and even more so, you could write your own stuff. You can write a project that you can be in, and there, you just created work for yourself. Also, on a side note, you'll hear a lot of professors or teachers say that you need to know what your brand is. I think that's one of the most important things when you're starting. You need to know what your type is. Everybody wants to be, I would love to say that my type is, well, I'm a Brad Pitt, like an 8-pack, sort of tan. No, I'm not. I have to know what I can play and what to market myself as, because weirdly, I don't know if a lot of people think about this, as an actor, you are the CEO of your own company. Your product is you, and you have to advertise that product, and you have to sell that product, and you can rebrand that product. But a lot of that is knowing what your brand is. And if you want to be, I might get in trouble for this, but if you want to be the leading person, if you want to be that, part of that is working out, eating healthy. Somebody once told me that your job when you're not actually on set is to study, to go to the gym, and to plan. You have to constantly be working on yourself. I think Los Angeles gets a lot of bad rap, especially from my friends in New York, because we're always talking about the industry. But I take pride in that because we talk about it because we love it, and we're always trying to think of ways to do more things in it. If it's something you love, you should be thinking about it all the time. And making your own work, too, can involve theater. It does exist in Los Angeles. Down there, that picture is from Sci-Fest, a play festival that I was in this past year. And it's just a bunch of people who wanted to do some fun science fiction plays that really didn't exist out here, and doing theater for the sake of doing theater. Yeah, you'd invite people to it, but it's a way to get up and play and feel like you're actually doing something for your career. The good news about all of this is it can lead to fun stuff. If any of you know my work, these are some silly set photos and what have you. The bottom right's from Stargate Universe, which was on Sci-Fi. Bottom left was doing press for that, and the top right was from Comic-Con. It really is a blast, especially when you have a good support group to meet people and kind of, forgive me, it's kind of like an insane asylum. And if you can find some other inmate that help you pass the time and understand your brand of crazy. It'll make all the difference in the world. And being on set and acting and knowing that you're getting a paycheck doing something that you love, there's nothing like it. There's free food, which is wonderful when you're fat like me. There's recognition, which you shouldn't be pursuing, but is not a horrible, horrible thing for someone to come up to you that you've never met before and say they love your work, or that it affected them, or it helped them through a hard time. The good times are really good, but you need to think about what you're willing to go through for those good times. And if there's any questions, I can take those questions now before I continue to just ramble. Is anybody there? Ah, yes. Oh, there are some questions. Woo! Hi, everybody. I just found out that there's a bunch of people here. Yay, I'm not talking to myself. You guys can still hear me, right? I didn't disconnect on accident. Somebody just respond to let me know that.
David, can you hear me?
Yes, now I can. There you go.
Hi, sorry, I was muted there. I actually have a lot of questions.
Woo! Questions.
I put a couple of them in the chat box just so I wouldn't lose them. This one over here was, how has the internet changed the acting industry, was one of the questions.
Oh, okay, actually I can see your chat box now, so if you want to post them there, you can too.
Okay.
How has the internet changed the acting industry? You know, I really thought it would make everything 1,000 times better, because when I first moved out here, it was still slightly changing. Right before I moved here, you would have to find out you had an audition, because you get a phone call from your agent. You'd drive to the casting office. You'd pick up the script, the sides. You'd go to a coffee shop. You'd look over it. You'd come back and you'd audition. When I moved here, it had already moved to email, where you'd get a phone call about an audition, you get emailed the script. But because the internet is so prevalent nowadays and such a huge part of our culture, it's changed dramatically. You used to have to move to Los Angeles or New York if you ever wanted to work. Now you have people in Atlanta recording themselves on a camera and sending it to somebody to submit. So it kind of, in a great way, opened up possibilities, and in a horrible way, made everything harder, because now there's more people competing for the jobs, and because of the economy and because of the economy, there's less jobs to go around and more people taking less money for the jobs. So the competition has gone through the roof. But the good news is, if you don't live in LA or New York yet, you might still be able to get work. If you're in Atlanta, if you're watching this in Atlanta, you could audition. You can get an Atlanta agent and audition for shows out there. You know, there have been shows that I wanted to go in for out there that they're like, no, we want somebody who's here. So it's kind of changed the world in a good and a bad way at the same time. What's the longest you have been between acting jobs? Well, if we count the beginning, it was quite a while. I finished Actors Theater of Louisville. I did an apprenticeship there, and then I moved back to Orlando because I didn't know what to do. And I worked at a bar, Smoky Bones Barbecue. And it was about 8 months before an audition I had done at the Straw Hat Festival in New York led to doing Anything Goes in Virginia. So that can be a while. If you're talking about TV and film, I went 1.5 years between jobs, which is frightening when you really think about it. Part of that is my fault. I changed myself physically on purpose. I lost a lot of weight on purpose during Stargate and for myself. So when I came back to the industry, the interesting thing was that I kind of was restarting. I had to show people who I was now, which is in a way rebuilding your career. So in that time, there was a period there where I barely auditioned and barely went out. And that's frightening. So you got to keep that in mind too. OMG, so many questions. Woo! Hi, I wanted to ask you how the daily goes in order to achieve your goal. Sorry, you guys can't see this. I wanted to ask, what are the daily tasks in order to achieve your goal? As in, what do you do on a daily basis to get closer to achieve your goal of being an awesome actor? Well, I'd love to be an awesome actor. For me, my position is different than other people's because I have a little bit of a resume behind me. I have credits behind me, but the advice I give to people who are just starting, which I think is more important, is to always be a shark. If I may, you always have to be working towards it. I think if you're not in a class, keep in mind there are financial things involved in this, but if you're not in a class, if you can't afford one, then try to get a job that helps you take a class, because you should always be in class so you're prepared. I think you need to do things on your own, like set up a reading group with your friends. Once a week, everyone gets to your house and you can read a play out loud. That's something we did at Actors Theater of Louisville. It doesn't cost any money, except for the food that you want to, or the pizza you want to order for your friends, and you're all practicing. You can download scripts off the internet. You can download sides from actual auditions off of some sites, and then get up and do that in front of your friends. You just kind of always need to be honing your craft. And then on the other side, you need to be working towards your goal, whether it's sending out headshots to agents and managers, buying books to research agents and managers, like if you're coming to Los Angeles, there's a great book called The Los Angeles Agent Guide by K.K. Callan, which breaks down each agency and who works there and how many clients they have and what their mentality is. And you can find ones that speak to you, that you're interested in, and maybe target them. You just kind of always have to be, you have to live in whatever career it is you want. You have to live in that. See movies, watch television, but not lazily just to watch television, but see what's out there. See if there's a market for you. The next question, what are you going to be in Aperture Science, and is the cake a lie? The cake is a lie. That's a Portal quote, for those of you who don't know Portal. Unfortunately, I'm not in a Portal game. I do voiceover stuff, too. Somebody asked that earlier. Again, I just love acting in all of its forms. I'm lucky enough to get to do some voiceover gigs now. I started a few years ago doing voiceovers. I'm currently in Sunset Overdrive, the Xbox One game. And I'll tell you that that's a fun... voiceover is a harder industry to get into than television and film, if you can believe it. Very, very hard, because there's a very few people who actually continuously work in voiceover. But it's a blast. A lot of people nowadays record voiceover auditions at home, which sounds strange, but with the technology you can. So you kind of feel like an insane person having a blast in your, whether it be recording studio or your bedroom, creating all of these characters and voices and yelling into a mic and then emailing it to somebody. But it's kind of a nice way to break things up when you're between television and film auditions, because you're auditioning constantly for animated things, whether or not you get it. Next, hi, I'm Ashley Valenti. Am I pronouncing that correct? Who is your favorite co-star that you worked with? Ooh, it's a loaded question. I like them all for different reasons. A lot of the ones I've stayed friends with, you know, so I see more often, so they pop in my mind. Not that they're better than anyone else, but I'm still friends with Lou Diamond Phillips. We worked together in Stargate Universe. I was just at his daughter's birthday party a few weeks ago. Robert Carlyle and I always had a blast on set. He's one of those actors where you can act opposite of, and the world kind of fades away, and it really feels real, and it's just an amazing feeling. Still friends with Claudia Black from Farscape and Stargate SG-1 and a million other things. I just like people. I'll be honest and say that there's a lot of these people in the industry, but I wish there was all of these people in the industry. I love working with people who love what they do and realize we're lucky to do what we do. Because anybody who takes advantage of it, it's a nightmare to be around. But when people really enjoy it and they're friendly and they have fun with it, you can't beat it. I lucked out with Stargate Universe because most of my cast, if not all of my cast, was like that. And we just felt like a family always having fun. Who did I play on The Sweet Life of Zack and Cody? I was Dr. Chip Walters, the hotel doctor, in the episode where Zack and Cody got very sick. Actually, everyone got very, very sick. I was an inept doctor. Because of my youthful appearance, I tend to play a lot of inept characters. Next, if you do write your own play, movie, show, project, that's a lot of writing, how do you go about it getting it produced? Is it super hard? Yeah, it really is. I don't know if my parents are watching. Love you. But I write, and they always want me to get my stuff produced. And much like anything in this world, it's not a lateral move to make easily. You can't have worked a little bit in television and film and just give someone a script and it gets produced, because, one, everyone does that, so not a lot of people are interested. But also, there's a lot of money involved. You'd be surprised how much money it takes to shoot, let's say, a short film. Let's just go with a hypothetical case. You write a short film, 10 to 12 minutes long, for you and your friends. It's just silly. In order to produce that, you probably need anywhere from $3,000 to $12,000. It's a lot of money, because you need to rent the gear. So if you don't already have it, and again, if you're independently wealthy, feel free to email me and call me, and we'll produce things together. but you have to rent the camera, you have to rent the lights, the sound equipment, the location, unless you're only shooting in your living room, in which case, well done. You have to feed the crew. You can't just, even people volunteering their time need water and food and bathroom toiletries. You need to pay people usually, because even though people volunteer their time, there are some people that you're going to need to pay, like an editor, possibly a writer, possibly a producer to help you out. It's not as easy as you'd think, which is why, on the flip side, when you're on set, when you're lucky enough to book that television job or that film job, you really shouldn't waste anyone's time, because there's millions of dollars at stake that people are spending. You know, like, I don't know the exact financials, or I wouldn't even speak of them if I did, but let's say Stargate Universe, each episode costs over $1 million to make. So yeah, you're sitting around for hours waiting for someone to fix a light or to gaff something or fix electrics, but when they're ready, you have to be ready, because every minute that you waste, you're costing these production companies thousands of dollars, which, one, will make you not get hired again, but two, is just mean. These people want to go back to their families, and you do too, probably. Julia asks, how do you prepare for an audition? Well, Julia, I've studied a lot of different techniques along the way. I love that about UCF. When I went there, they taught us method, Meisner, viewpoints, Suzuki, all that jazz. I look at acting as a tool belt. You should study everything you can, and then you apply whatever you need to the audition. If I'm auditioning for a character that is very much me, I never play myself, but is very much something that's innately inside of myself, I tend to go with a more Meisner perspective of just seeing the reactions I'd have to this person. But I'm also a Poindexter. I'm really nerdy. I still break down scenes. I break down any moments into tactics and intentions and motivations, all those actory, theatery things, and rehearse the heck out of it. But then you have to, I'm going to steal another acting teacher that I love's quote, dare to suck. Once you're prepared, you have to throw it away and live in the moment. That is one thing that I think one place that TV and theater really differ. Theater, you rehearse, and you get it in your bones, and it's really mechanical. And then once you open, you throw it away. Television and film, a lot of times nowadays, you don't rehearse scenes before you shoot them. Everyone comes to set ready to go. It's the same with an audition. You have to just go and be prepared enough to play and have fun, because nobody wants to watch somebody just spewing lines or so robotic and over-prepared. And the biggest piece of advice, I teach acting, but I'm going to give you guys a little free lesson right here, is to not treat an audition, wherever it is, Florida, New York, LA, London, Mars, it's not an audition. It's a chance to perform. And it's really hard to remember that because it's nerve-wracking, but if you look at it as an audition as your minute and a half on a stage and these people asked you to come in and perform for them, it really makes all the difference in the world. You have to kind of remind yourself that you enjoy this. I know that sounds weird. Next person said, many people nowadays are told that their dreams are unrealistic, impossible, and sometimes even get laughed at in the face. What do you say to these negative remarks? One of my favorite quotes that I'm probably about to butcher is, beware the dreamers of the day. Oh, and I just screwed it up. Beware the dreamers of the day. Look up that quote. My favorite quote that I just forgot. I'm nervous talking to you guys. But it's a hard thing. It really is. There's a sad moment in any actor's life when someone asks you what you do and you live in Los Angeles or New York. Anywhere else. Like, I love visiting family in Florida because people go, what do you do? I'm an actor. Like, oh, really? In LA, it's, what do you do? I'm an actor. It's this, oh, you too? Like, there's a joke nowadays where if somebody says anything other than I'm an actor, it's like, oh, a unicorn. It's amazing because everyone out here does it. Everyone's pursuing that. I think you don't even need to respond to the negative remark. You pursue your, as long as it's not hurting anyone else, do what makes you happy. Because at the end of your life, that's all that's going to matter. Were you happy and did you do good things for other people? I can say selfishly that not only is acting something that I love, but I have been lucky enough to see people. I was just at Dragon Con 2 months ago and someone came up to me and said they were going through a very rough time in their life And the only thing that got them through it was they knew that they could come home on Fridays and watch Stargate Universe, and they could disappear into it, and that's why they survived. And that floored me and kind of made me go, oh, okay, I'm not just doing it because I enjoy it. I actually am providing a service. So if that's how you feel, then that's all that matters. A support group is great, but you're your first support group. Many people nowadays, and I quote, are told that their dreams are no, I already said that. You remind me of Ted Mosby from How I Met Your Mother. You sound like him as well. I've been told that I look like him, but I haven't been told that I sound like him. Thank you, because I gained a lot of weight and then lost that weight. So I'd rather look like Ted Mosby than other things you could have said. What's funny is I auditioned for the spinoff, How I Met Your Father, or How I Met Your Dad, and the whole time I'm just like, oh, people are going to be like Ted Mosby's on this show too? Is it hard? Here's the next question. Is it hard to get into your character, then to switch back to being yourself, asks Amanda. Not if you're not crazy. No, it can be. That is one thing that I think theater has over TV and film. Because when you're preparing for a stage production, you get in a character, you do all your whatever, zip, zap, zops, or anything you need to do, and you start your play and you run it until the end and you're done. Television and film, it's a lot of stopping and starting because you think, if you haven't done it before, technically, well, I'm in a scene with someone else. We have to shoot me, and then we have to shoot them, and then we have to shoot the two of us, and then a close-up of me, and then a close-up of them, and then like an insert of our hands. So you're stopping and starting constantly, and each one of those, they have to reset up the lights, change the background, move stuff around. Maybe the other actor is busy, and you're acting against a stand-in. Who the hell knows? It's not... That's where your training really comes in. You need to have like those touchstones to get back into a character, or have prepared enough before you even got to set where you're ready to jump back in. But it's kind of that way all the time with auditions. If you have a really emotional 4-page scene where you're breaking down, crying, and then you drive to the audition and you ran out of gas, so you have to stop and you get gas, and oh, you're really hungry, so you pick up some food, and then you can't find parking anywhere. You finally get there and sign in and find out there's 8 people in front of you, and they're all chatty. And they're talking about everything, and then you get a text message from someone that something happened in your family. Like, it's distractions everywhere, but you have to hone your craft enough that you can just jump back in. It won't always happen, but your job is to try to get it, so it will. Would you ever choose a different career path if acting didn't work out for you? I've asked myself that a lot throughout my life. As I said, I was going to study computer science, and probably could have made a good living doing it, but I decided it was important enough to me where I had to give it my all. And I've thought along the way, you know, between gigs or what have you, if I had to make a living, what else could I do? I would, and maybe it would make me happy, but right now this is what makes me happy. I love directing and writing and producing. I love creating, but acting is still my favorite thing to do. So let's say I became a successful producer. Acting would still be the most important part of it for me. And there are other people who discover other things along the way, and that's okay. I have a friend who moved out here to act, and after 8 years of trying, started getting into producing commercials and loved it, and moved to New York and works for a company producing commercials in New York. And that's okay. That she discovered something else that makes her just as happy. I also have as many friends, honestly, from theater school who tried and weren't enjoying it, and then met someone and they started a life and had kids, and now they run a different company together or work somewhere else. Whatever your bliss is, not to sound too philosophical, that's what you need to follow. Ooh, somebody found the quote. But the dreamers of the day are dangerous men, for they may act their dreams with open eyes to make it possible. Thank you, Karina. I appreciate that. I really do love that quote. I don't know why I couldn't remember that at all. Somebody asked twice if I sing. Yeah, I do. Again, being prepared and keeping everything up, I got my degree in musical theater, and I did a lot of musicals and sang a lot. And when I was doing, no, I'm not going to sing. When I was doing, was it Little Shop of Horrors or Anything Goes, I developed vocal nodules, so I had to stop. And that's right around the time that I decided to move to Los Angeles. In my mind, I was giving up musical theater, because at the time, as much as we wanted movie musicals to be a thing, it wasn't. And then weirdly, Chicago, the movie, came out, and movie musicals were a thing again. And it wasn't until I started working in TV and film that I started getting, weirdly, opportunities to do musicals. I did a few benefits with, I did a benefit with Dick Van Dyke, Vanessa Williams, Jason Alexander, Kevin Chamberlain, where we got to sing Bye Bye Birdie on stage for the Alzheimer's Association. Nowadays, again, being prepared, I had to get back into voice lessons because I auditioned for things like Smash or other musical shows or movies. It's back. Anything you can do that makes you happy, do it. And I miss singing. I have my guitar right over there to try to get back into that because I used to play. Smash rocked. I am also sad it was canceled. Yeah, I loved the pilot of Smash. I loved the pilot of Smash. I would have killed to be on that. I think that that's probably my next dream, to sing on TV or film, because then it's finally achieving the thing that I worked so hard at. I still remember in Orlando when we were at UCF dreaming of doing movie musicals and how they used to exist and they don't anymore. We're getting back there. I'll tell you right now, there's a couple musical pilots that they're aiming for next year. Who knows if they'll end up on television or not. That's the other thing, pilot season. Let me prepare you for that. Pilot season is the main season that they cast and produce pilots. Pilot being the first episode of a TV show they want to make. And it used to just be February through April. Nowadays, because there's so many more networks and so many more avenues to air things, it's kind of spread out. You'll find pilots. You know, I went in for an MTV pilot 2 months ago, and then I went in for a sci-fi one 3 months ago. Pilot season technically doesn't start till January, but it's crazy. A bunch of people who don't normally live in LA and New York come to LA during pilot season because everyone's competing for the job. It's a little bit like a coliseum with a bunch of gladiators all fighting for the same jobs, and it's crazy. And it's insane, and it's something that you have to prepare for separately than just acting in TV and film. Because if you're lucky and you have a great agent or manager, you're going to audition a lot. I one day auditioned for 3 different pilots in the same day. And LA is very spread out compared to New York, so it's a lot of driving and a lot of traffic. So I would go to one audition in Hollywood and then drive an hour and a half to Santa Monica and then drive back. And you have to think that while you're doing that, you have to be preparing your audition too, so you're ready to go when you go in the room. It's a little crazy. Sheila asks, have you ever been starstruck? If so, by whom? I'm only starstruck by people whose work I respect, not just because they're famous. One thing you'll learn after living in LA or New York for any period of time is you don't really get flabbergasted around somebody because you're like, they're a coworker in a way. So the 2 people that I can think of that really starstruck me were Eddie Izzard, because I think he's one of the funniest people on the planet, and a friend of mine worked with him and introduced me to him after his show at the Hollywood Bowl, and I pretty much embarrassed myself. And Matthew Perry, because I love Friends, and I always have a bit of Chandler inside of me. So I saw him at a movie theater once, and I just kind of pointed and went, huh! But for the most part, these people are your peers, and you run into them constantly. I'm lucky enough to have a great group of friends out here that when I go to their parties, they work a lot, and they have people that I never would have expected to see. You know, like, I can't even. I watch Vampire Diaries. I do. I'll admit it. And a friend of mine, Seth Green, was having a party, and Daniel Giles, who was on Vampire Diaries and is now on Originals, walked in, and you become that little person in that corner, just like, oh my God, is that person? Is that that person? But then you talk to them, and you realize they're just really cool people who love performing, just like you. And probably finally, because I'm chatty, somebody asked, what is your ideal role? It's a good question. This is going to sound like a cop-out, but anything. I just love performing. My ideal role right now, because I've lost a lot of weight and have tried to get into shape, would be something a little bit more cool, like whether it be in a superhero Marvel movie or a soldier, something I haven't played before. To me, one that pays money also, but to me, anything that I'm scared of, this has always kind of been my life philosophy. If I'm scared of it, I have to do it. So something that I haven't done before always draws me more. And I've been lucky to work as I have, and I've played all sorts of roles, but I definitely haven't done a type of role like one of my old co-stars, Ming Na, is doing on Agents of S.H.I.E.L.D. I would love to kick butt and be part of a cool government agency. Haven't gotten a chance to do that yet, but I hope that's coming soon. Ooh, and Pasco asked, will I do this again next year? Sure. Hopefully from my palace of gold laying on a bed of diamonds. But other than that, yeah, I'd love to. I hope that I helped. I hope that I answered some of your questions. I will say, I forgot to put that slide up. Well done. I have a website. It's david-blue.com. You can email me, david@david-blue.com. I'm on Twitter, @davidblue. Feel free to check out my podcast. You can link to it on my site. I am always there for people who are interested in the career and to talk about the industry or answer any questions you have. I'm around. Thank you.
Thank you, David. You are totally awesome. And a lot of students were sending in a lot of questions very quickly. Like my phone was buzzing off the hook over here. So I tried to put in as many good ones as I could. Some of them were repeats, so I tried to put those in there. But kids, as David mentioned, he has a website. He has a Twitter. You can email him or tweet him. I'm so not cool. Yeah, you can tweet him your questions. He really is a sweetie pie. I'm lucky to be related to him. Yeah, and hopefully he will come back and share his knowledge with us. And if you're in my language arts course, maybe I can con him into coming in one time and doing a session with us again, because it was very helpful. David gave us a lot of great advice in general about acting in life, and we really appreciate all of the time that you spent with us. So we really do appreciate that.
Thank you for having me.
Yay! And